First off, I'd like to explain that the meeting has been recorded and that will be on the Council's website. The meeting is also being live streamed on the Council's YouTube channel. I'd like to explain the health and safety requirements for the chamber that are displayed on the screen. And also that you need to sign in if you haven't signed in yet. We have got those signs just out in the lobby for COVID, so if you can do that, that would be great. And also when you are presenting, can you please just first off explain who you are so that that can then go on record. So it's just identify yourself before you actually start speaking so that the people who are listening in can actually know who you are when you are speaking. My name is, just to say off that, my name is Leonie Harpera, and I am chairing this meeting this morning, and would like to open the meeting first off with apologies. So first apology is for Councillor Barrett. Is there any other apologies this morning? Oh, we've got a few. We'll start off with the Mayor.
Madam Chair, just possible early departure just for on council business, but just unsure how long the meeting goes. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Johnson.
Same as the Mayor, possible early departure on council business. Thank you.
Councillor Finlay. Councillor McLeay.
Yeah, same as the Mayor, early departure as well. Thanks.
I think we're all going to the same thing. I think we're proposing to be finished around about 11:30, so I'm hoping that you all will be all right to go to your function. But that's what we're proposing to finish around about. Does anybody else want to put in for this? Okay, we're all good. Okay. We'll look forward going into the next item. Is there any additional items? Sorry, we'll move the apologies first. I'd like to move them, seconded by the Councillor Dennison. I'd like to vote.
Madam Chair, are we capturing Councillor McCarlad's early departure?
Sorry. Thanks. Councillor Bowen? They're all coming thick and fast, I think. Right, we're all ready to vote. Councillor Bowen, I think your thing might not be working. That's it. We've passed 100%. Moving on to the next item, which is notification of additional items. I haven't heard of any, so we'll move on to the next item, which is declarations of interest. Again, I haven't heard of anything, so we will move on to the next item, which is public comment. We don't have any public comments, so we'll move on to the next item, which is presentations, and we'll first have Andy Stewart from the Real Estate Institute of New Zealand coming up first. Thank you, Andy. Oh, that's the wrong one. We're just changing your one because no. We had the wrong presentation up. You were going to talk about Ruma's presentation. Okay. That's all right. Thank you, Andy.
Right, good morning. Firstly, thanks Leonie and the team for inviting me to come into this meeting. I've been to a few of them now and it's something that I look forward to doing. For those who don't know me, my name's Andy Stewart. I'm the Real Estate Institute Ambassador for the region, also the spokesperson for the Real Estate Institute. I'm probably one of the older guys in real estate, having been in it for about 33 years since retiring from the Army. I've held various management appointments within the industry and am currently working at Unique Realty as a salesperson and auctioneer, which I'm loving after having been in management for a number of years. My brief today is again a bit of an update from the marketplace, the coalface if you like. Very interesting times, as you know. Everything in New Zealand is going on about housing, the availability of it, the cost of it. And we are no different in Manawatu. In fact, we are probably leading the way, not that we want to be, in unaffordability of houses because our prices are climbing, which I'll touch on shortly. Certainly a seller's market, wonderful if you're selling your home, not so good if you're buying, and not so good if you're buying and selling because you're doing it in the same market. A recent report from QV, which some of you may have seen, Jason Hockley said if the rates of inflation on property or advancement on price of property continue at the current level, which is, he estimates, $1,000 a day, by next December, our median price will be $1 million. Now, I find that very hard to believe, because what will happen is the market will determine that they can't afford it. So consequently, we may see a turnaround in the market. So I don't know if anyone else believes of $1 million a day, but I thought it was a bit far-fetched. But Jason's a valuer and I'm not. So I just speak from the coalface. Okay, already first home buyers had to lift their purchase price, and now they're looking at sort of $600,000-700,000 for first home buyers, which when you think about it is unbelievable. My concern is that the amount of mortgage, or the cost of the amount of the borrowing, if we get a blip in the interest rates of 1%, then I'm going to be re-employed on mortgagee sales. That's the cold hard facts, because a lot of people taking mortgage at that level won't survive if we get an increase in interest rates. It's going to be interesting in September when QV release the new quotable value prices, or the rateable values for Palmerston North, to see where they go, and obviously it affects rates and things like that, so that'll be of concern to the council long term, and concern to the residents. A recent report from Ryan showed that the Manawatu-Wanganui area, and I try not to talk about that all the time because I believe we're pulled down by Wanganui in regard to values and things. We were the second highest growth rate in New Zealand behind Hawke's Bay and Gisborne. So it just shows what's actually happening when you compare in February 2020. In Palmerston North, our growth rate was 29.5% year on year. In February 2020, the median sale price was $522, compared to the median sale price of $676,500 in February 2021. Incidentally, that's the highest we've ever had in Palmerston North as far as median price goes. I was shocked in October last year when we finally broke the $600,000 bracket, and that was $619,500 in October, and suddenly we're $57,000 higher 4 months later as a median price. Unfortunately, the increase in median sale prices affected the affordability for first home buyers struggling to secure their first home. Many first home buyers enter a number of multiple offers prior to being able to secure a property, and many parents are helping their children into properties using equity they've got in their family home. It was not long ago that first home buyers could buy something under $500,000. That's a thing of the past. To show an example of this, in February 2020, there were 116 sales recorded. Of these, 48, that's 41%, were under $500,000. And a total of 68 were over $500,000. 2 of those were over $1 million. In February 2021, there were 121 sales recorded. Of this, just 15 sales were under $500,000. Only 15 sales under $500,000, and a massive 106 sales, 88%, are over $500,000, and 6 were over $1 million of those ones. So our prices have gone berserk. To put things into perspective, the median price in Palmerston North of $676,500, and the median price for the rest of New Zealand, excluding Auckland, was $655. So it shows our affordability has taken a hit. Interest rates are the lowest in 60 years, which certainly stimulates the lower end of the market. These factors have caused a roll-up effect in activity in mid-market, with vendors selling and first-home buyers rebuying at higher levels. Currently, there's an incredible demand for all sorts of property. Pricing property has become a major issue. We endeavour to work out what price of property should be introduced to the market by considering very recent statistics, hopefully a month or two ago. And once on the market, the buyers determine the value of the property, not us, because everything is negotiated now upwards. And I use an example. There was a property in Ward Street sold, one of JPAC's properties he built in there, small property, 151 square metres, sold in March 2020 for $717,000. It was listed again in February this year at $795 plus, and it's just sold at $951. Incredible, absolutely incredible. Recent moves by the Reserve Bank to slow the investment properties by introducing an LVR, loan value ratio of 40%, has had a little bit of effect, but then most people that are buying rental properties in Palmerston North now are local people using equity in their home to secure a rental property because the money in the bank's so poor. Okay, so that's what's happening here. The average number of sales recorded in the city consistently ranges from 120 to 140 properties per month, whilst the number of available listings in the city has decreased between 120 and 130, and we've been down to 98. This is total properties on the market in Palmerston North. So you can see that every month we're having problems. Everything's coming on, it's selling, 2 weeks gone. So there's such intense competition that the multiple offers are dictating everything. Ryan's stat for February showed that Manawatu Wanganui, and this is the only time I'm going to refer to it, had the lowest level of listings available in the country, with their inventory being less than 6 weeks stock. Well, in fact, in Palmerston North, we're way less than 6 weeks stock. We're surviving on about 4 weeks stock. The current number of days to sell is 20 on the market. Most properties are under offer within the first open home. So you have a week on the market, call for a deadline for offers probably on the Wednesday after the open home. The vendors hit with anything from 3 offers to 15 offers. We're getting 30, 40 groups through open homes. So the vendors are in the king's seat there. I'm going to touch on sections because it's dear to my heart, and I believe we've got an extreme shortage of available sections in Palmerston North. And I know people say there's 160 or 200 sections or something. Where are they, and when are they able to be sold? That's the question I ask the council. I think the process of approving the sections in Palmerston North is really, really bad. I think it's slow, it's holding up developers. There's dozens of people out there that want to buy sections because they want to build new homes because they can't find what they want, and the process is slow, and you can't deny that. I spoke to Brian Green the other day, and I said, Brian, what can you sell me if I want to buy a section from you now? He said, 1 section, a lifestyle in Turitea Valley. That's all he had available. Now, he is the biggest developer in Palmerston North by a country mile. And I also spoke to him about a number of other things, and he said he thought the process was slow as well. And so do a number of other developers which I've talked to. Okay, and I know you're aware of it because I've seen the reports in the paper anyway. I'm aware that sections are coming on. I've touched on that. To summarise, I think that the real estate industry within the city is alive and well and kicking on. I see no reason why anything's going to change. Certainly prices aren't going to come back. And everything will continue as it is at the moment. The positivity of our city and what the city offers will continue to attract more out-of-town buyers with new infrastructure projects for the city, such as the new Gorge Rail Hub, work at Ohaki, will continue to provide employment opportunities in the city and bring new people into the city. So basically, we've got a shortage of housing, we've got a shortage of rental properties, and that's another issue, but rental properties are short. So thank you very much for allowing me to present that to you, and if you've got any questions, I would welcome them.
Thanks, Andy. That was a great presentation, and there are questions in the queue for you already, so let's get started. I've got the Mayor starting off.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks, Andy. It's good to get an up-to-date. We had an economic development presentation last night, and Peter's in the room now, but unfortunately, even though that was quicker than some of the stats that come to us, it's still a lag. So the figures that were presented last night, these are different again, in an upward trend. And you've given all the reasons why. I just want to touch on the sections, because I get my door beaten down on that same topic as well. And do you think we're in a bit of a lag position? Because there are a number of bigger subdivisions for the first time ever, I think, other than just 1 or 2 of the main players. You know, for instance, the council's own subdivision at Whakaronga is, I think, 79 sections. And we've got the race group yet to start, I know, but it's been approved, that land rezoning there. And there are others around, up at Katari. Do you think it's a lag, or do you think there is genuinely a real problem even going forward?
I think it is a real problem because the developers are, they can only develop when they get approval, and to get into it and get these things going, it's well and good to say they're coming on, but I know that the sections in Freedom Drive down there in Marriott Subdivision and ones up in Pacific Drive are sold before the titles are through. As soon as they're released to the market, they're gone. So the council ones, I understand and I see that because I drive past them most days. Yes, I know it's going on, but it's a process that just seems to be slow. And, for developers to price sections, they are trying to price sections today and introduce them. When they finally get to sell them, they could have gone up $5,000, $10,000, $20,000 in the time they put them on. So they're reserved about putting them out to the market till they know they can price them accordingly. Because everything's going up. Development costs are going up. Everything's going up.
So, Madam Chair, just one more. So it's the process you believe is the...
I do believe it's the process.
Okay.
And I know that we're bogged down with all the things that central government imposes on us, but there's got to be a way to speed up the approval of sections somehow. It is a major problem.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Councillor Beattie.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for your presentation. How many sections at the moment do you think we're short? What's your sort of forecast as to what?
400 or 500 at least, because they'll go. If there's 400 or 500 sections available, that'll go because the cost of the properties are getting so high. So if people can go and buy and build fresh, healthy homes, they will take that option. And if they can afford to pay $600,000 or $700,000 to a house, they could buy a section and they could put one of the new modern relocatables on and have their first home probably within the same sort of price range. It's a guess, but I think that's probably pretty right.
May I ask another question? And just looking at rentals, do you see that there's barriers for people trying to move into Palmerston for work because of shortage of rentals?
Absolutely. There are rentals available, but if you look at the cost that people are paying for rentals now, and we had a brief from our rental division yesterday, which is probably the biggest one in Palmerston, and unbelievable, rentals of $600 a week. That's how can a medium income family pay $600 a week? It's unbelievable. And some of them sit around on the market, but we are desperately short of rental properties as well, good quality rental properties. And, it's just the way it is.
Thank you.
Councillor Dingwall.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for coming in and talking to us. With the houses that you're selling at the moment, are you seeing some of them being land banked, or are you seeing them being held for a few months and then flipped and then flipped and then flipped again, or are these families trying to buy homes? Like, who's actually buying all these houses?
The market's really driven from the bottom end, and first home buyers want to get their piece of land in New Zealand. They're desperate to get it, and that's why they fight in multiple offer situations, and that's why they make offers that we don't even see coming, the level that they're coming. I don't think that example I gave of the Ward Street one, I don't think that was, it may have been flipping, but the thing is there that they would come under the, what is that? Yeah, bright line test. But even if you had to pay tax on the 200,000 in a year, it's not a lot of tax for when you're making probably 150,000. So there is a huge demand for properties that offer the ability to infill subdivision, and that's something that I think the council's got pretty well right. I think that the approval of infill subdivisions are happening. It's the greenfield, the major approvals for ones, but the demand is there for everything. I don't think there's a lot of people. We do have people from Auckland putting offers on properties sight unseen, but they get weeded out in the process by the vendors because they, you know, when someone's making an offer on a property and they haven't even seen it, is it going to work? You know? So it frustrates us because we want to sell to locals.
Fair enough.
Thank you, Andy. That's all the questions for today. Thanks
Thank you very much.
Thank you
Appreciate
very much for coming in. Oh, sorry, Councillor Bowen, you just came into the queue.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. I wanted to ask if you thought there was a market for apartments in Palmerston North. That seems to be the thing that we're missing. Would that help solve the problem if we had more apartments available?
I think it would, because I believe that what I'm seeing now, and we've just sold 2 in Madison Apartments, right? And they used to be a little bit slow, but you know, we sold 1 in Madison in the last week by someone else that had one in there already, and then she wanted to shift the side of the building. So she bought, and then she's got the other one on the market. There's 2 currently on there. I believe they'll be gone within a couple of weeks. More people are looking at apartments, and in fact, my partner said to me the other day, why don't they use some of the vacant commercial building and bring them up to scratch for apartments? Good question. I mean, Brian Green's done that on the one next to Aberdeen, but they have been they've been a slow process in selling, and you know, it's horses for courses. But I believe that people will buy them, and even a little 2-bedroom unit in Broadway. You know, 1 week on the market, we've got an offer on it.
Thank you very much. That's all the questions. Sorry, Councillor Dingwall, we've actually had enough. Thank you very much for all the questions.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andy. So I'll look to move that, seconded by Councillor Jennison. We'll look to, is there any comment on that? Sorry,
Madam Chair, thank you. Thanks, Andy, for your comments. And obviously, this current real estate housing situation is the perfect storm of supply and demand. I took his comments around the supply of sections relatively seriously. It is a little concerning that those in the marketplace, or the coalface as you called it, were deemed it the process really slow. We have a number of tools, obviously, in the consenting space, and we've got to start using them. I know that you know, it has taken with central government. There's a lot more things that we need to do, but things that we control, like urban design and greenfields, I think we do have to speed up the process somehow. Still getting the outcomes that we require, but if we don't, we'll be caught very much. And we've probably only got I reckon about 7 to 8 months to release some more sections, and I do hope through the GM of Strategy and Planning that we're on to that, because it's interesting that we're 500 odd sections short, according to the market. Thank you.
Thank you. There doesn't look to be any more comment. Okay, we'll look to vote. Rachel, I think there's something wrong with your thing.
Changing hands.
Karen's here. Susan, can you pull Karen's card out? So that has passed 15 votes to 0. We'll move on to the next presentation, which is from Ruma, which is the Interim Regional Skills Leadership Group. So you've got 10 minutes. You know how the traffic light systems work?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Thank you.
Looking forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
This presentation has been prepared by my colleagues and masters at the Ministry for Business Innovation and Employment, so I'll try not to stumble over it and try to keep within the traffic light system as well. So I'm not sure how many of you have heard of the Regional Skills Leadership Groups, but this presentation is done in two sections, starting initially with the overall national picture. But we were set up initially to identify and support better ways to match the future skills needs in regions with demand. Initially, when we were set up in July last year, we were very focused on COVID and an immediate response to COVID. And we're going to be reviewed and we're in a process of review and change at the moment where we're going into a more long-term pattern. So this is a government initiative trying to coordinate workforces along with education, immigration systems and so forth on a regional basis. It's funded by central government, but trying to bring together a broad-based regional view. So although the initial focus was to support an immediate response to COVID, in the longer term, our job will be to develop annual regional workforce plans for the regions to try to project labour supply needs and ensure that the right skills and workforce planning is in place. This will influence local inputs and activities, but also policy and agencies on a national level. So just as a couple of examples, the tertiary funding organisation, TEC, and the new workforce development councils have already got regulation in place which compels them to have regard for the reports and outputs from the RSLGs. The main outputs to date have been a series of regional insight reports provided to the Minister of Labour and a group of associated ministers, but that focus will change in July 2021 as we go into this more focus on the longer-term workforce development plans. So far, and really running up until the end of June this year, there have been 14 of the 15 skills leadership groups nationally formed, and we've been busy gathering intelligence and building our local knowledge. And most regions have published their first regular local insight reports, but I'll come back to what we've actually done in that respect. From July this year, all the groups will be formally re-established. The current makeup will be looked at. We're in the process at the moment of re-advertising the chair positions, and they are changing from single chairs to co-chairs, and in actual fact, only Manawatu Whanganui and Otago have only got a single chair. Most groups have already got co-chairs. And then from 2021, we'll start producing the regional workforce development plans, but in most respects, we've all been working pretty hard to try to position ourselves so that we'll get a head start on the regional workforce plans. So this is just an aggregation of all the local insight reports nationally, and it's pretty hard to read, and I won't go through it, but there's a series of common themes that have come out from all of the groups, as well as a series of common challenges. One of the ones that has surprised me has been picking up on Andy's point around housing. So in our group, the second meeting, housing came up, and access to housing and housing security has a significant impact on employment opportunities and the workforce nationally, but also in our area. So everybody had a chance to read. I'll move on. So coming to Manawatu Whanganui, we were one of the first to form, and we had the advantage here of Accelerate 25 working in this space for a few years, and also in every TLA in our region, we had skills and talents groups already working as well. So we were able to get up and running pretty quickly. Initially also, as a group, we chose to meet fortnightly because we were a bit daunted by the size of the task that we were faced. And we had really two main focus during that period. One, we needed to make sure that everyone in the group had the same mutual understanding of our wider region. And plus, we needed to do deep dives into key issues. And for example, housing was one of those. So just a couple of slides here about Manawatu Whanganui, but I guess as part of the region. Most of you know a lot of these things pretty well. But one of our challenges is sheer size. So going from Ruapehu in the north to Horowhenua and Tararua in the south, we've got an enormous geographic area to cover and a big diverse population. And just as one example of that, we have 16 iwi in this region that we have to interact with. And that in itself is pretty challenging. And this is just a quick snapshot. I will caution you that this is 2018 data, which is one of the big challenges that we all face, Economic Development Committee, as well as regional skills leadership groups, that the data is so aged. But one of the things that this does show is the massive significance of the primary industries in this region. So the makeup of our group, we had the advantage, I suppose, because we got off so early, that we had the opportunity to pretty well make ourselves up. Progressively, in the latter part of 2020, the ministry exerted more and more influence, and the groups became smaller and more tight. I'm personally quite proud of our group. It's nicely diverse. It's manifestly younger than all of the other groups around the country. We've got 3 members, for example, that are aged under 30. 5 of our group are Māori. We've got representatives of all the local TLAs, although over time we've lost 2 members, and one of those members was the representative from Ruapehu and also representing Ngāti Rangi. So that's a bit of a gap in our coverage, and in reconstituting the groups, the ministry is making sure they're much smaller than our group as well, so we may have some challenge in terms of whether or not we can truly represent all of our TLAs. Another example of the quality of our group, I had 2 months off sick in my role in Katarina, and Margaret just swung into place as co-chairs and have been co-chairs for the last couple of months. I haven't managed to wriggle my way back into it yet, but I will next meeting. So as I said earlier on, we're now in preparation for the reconstitution of these full regional skills leadership groups, and they'll drop the interim designation once that happens. This will be viewed as a much more permanent membership than we have at the moment. So we're only in step 1, which is advertising for co-chairs, and that is closed. So one chair will be a general chair, and I'm one of the people that's applied for that role. And then there is another co-chair, which must be Māori, and has to be supported, and somehow they haven't figured out how they're going to do that little piece. But one of the things that will happen is that we will continue local insights reporting, and there'll be a greater emphasis on regional engagement and iwi partnership in particular. So I won't go through all of this again, but these are the top local insights that have come out of our group over this period of time. Many of these are in common with the national one. The interesting thing is our top 2 are driver licensing and housing, both of which came out of our original deep dives. This is what our work plan looks like, or the work plan that we set ourselves for this first year. We've worked through it pretty comprehensively to date, and we've changed it slightly in recent times so that we're putting ourselves in a better position to give the full-blown group a head start. But much of what we've been doing, as I said earlier on, has just been trying to understand the region and doing a lot of mapping and so forth. We also have a big issue around data, but that's an issue that we all face. And just quickly, because the red lights come on, this is what an insight report looks like now that it's going to the ministers. Originally, they were 5 or 6 page reports with a lot of data sitting in behind them, but we're now up to providing 9 ministers, and they all want something they can just chuck into their weekend bag as they head home at the end of the week. Having said that, the same 5 pages of more information and a whole lot of data sits in behind them still as well. questions. Thank you.
Fantastic. That's really good. So my first question was around the regional workforce plans, and so you've sort of given us an outline of what you produce. So it's really just asking a question around sort of how much effort that goes into doing one of those sort of workforce plans.
Yes, well, one of the things I should have noted with you is, in fact, I'll be naughty and flick back a little bit to the makeup of the group. As I said earlier, it's government funded, which for one of the first times when I've been involved in these sorts of things, we are well supported. So we've got 2 critical people based in the region who are funded by full-time by MB, and they are forming our engine. Along with that, Katie Brosnahan, who's a member of the group, and many people in the Manawatu will think of her as Ministry of Social Development, but her role here is regional representation of the whole of government, and MSD are also providing significant resources, and in many ways we're rich in that sort of stuff. But it does involve a lot of input from all of our members, and when we get to the full-blown regional plans, they'll be annual plans, so we will have time and resource to get those together. It has been a bit more challenging with the insights reports. We've actually provided 4 of those, so although one of the earlier slides said everybody's done 1, we've done 4 so far, but that was just because we got an early start.
Great, thank you. There doesn't look to be any further questions, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'll look to move that, seconded by Councillor Hancock. Is there any comment? No? Okay, we'll look to vote. Thank you. Thank you very much for the presentation. That's passed with 16 votes. Right, our final presentation is from CEDA. We were having Janet, but she's actually sick today, so we've got Nina and Hayden coming to the table. So I did send you all a copy electronically of the Manawatu Destination Management Plan 2025. That's what I asked Janet to present to us today, but she's actually not here. So Hayden and Nina are going to give us some information around what they have been working with Rangatani in terms of the Destination Management Plan. So I'll just hand it over to you. Thank you.
Tēnā tātou, ko Hayden Pōtaka tōku ingoa, ko au te awa, ko te awa ko au, ana reira kānui te mihi kia koutou i te mana whenua Rangitāne e mihi ana kawana kia koutou katoa i te tēpū nei, nā mihi nunui kia koutou katoa.
Tēnā koutou katoa, ko Nina Mercer ahau, ko Tauhara tōko maunga, ko Waikato tōko awa, ke Manawatu, tōko kāinga noho, tēnā tātou katoa. Thank you, Leonie, for the introduction. Yes, so while we haven't been able to present to you around the DMP today, we are thankful to have the opportunity to actually talk to you about an exciting area of work that's come out of the Destination Management Plan, and that's the Rangatani o Manawatu Tourism Working Group.
The Destination Management Plan involves all aspects of destination and contributes to the visitor experience, including perspectives, needs, expectations, visitors, Māori, mana whenua and tourism industry, business community, the wider community and central and local government. It reflects a shift away from the focus of destination management to be more holistic and a collaborative approach to managing visitor growth. Setting the high strategy and direction for the visitor sector over a multiple year time horizon, with tactical and operational plans sitting underneath this plan. With this in mind, Wanaunatanga is at the centre of the destination management. Building and maintaining connection through shared experience is essential to working together to support one another and achieve greater outcomes.
From the Manawatu Destination Management Plan framework, one of the 4 key benefits identified as essential for the region was to engage with tangata whenua through meaningful partnerships and collaboration, ensuring Māori values are upheld. Effective partnerships with iwi and community were also identified as a critical enabler of the DMP early on in the development. And through the Year Zero Action Plan, which focused on setting the foundations, we engaged with key Rangatani or Manawatu representatives, where it was identified that wider engagement was needed with them. So we set about hosting a full-day workshop.
So the purpose of the workshop was to identify the current potential and aspirational Māori visitor product within inside of the city and region. We had a range of speakers from New Zealand Māori Tourism, Massey University with Professor Regina and Jason Mika in attendance, and also John Barrett from Kapiti Island as an exceptional visitor experience with a Māori culture aspect to it. Each of the speakers provided their insights into what Māori tourism is and can identify from the perspective of research and applied business acumen within inside of the sector as well. And that's about running a successful Māori tourism business. So the actual workshop provided direction for us to develop the next steps for the sector in terms of developing a working group to work on and enhancing the products for Manawatu in the city.
So work to date through the DMP for the Māori Tourism, Rangatani o Manawatu Tourism Working Group. Funding was secured through STAP, the Strategic Tourism Assets Protection Program, to appoint a fixed-term position to facilitate and administer the working group. That was me. The working group has been made up of Chris Whaiapu, Norwain Te Awi Mohi and Lewis Tiameti. And terms of reference have been created for the working group. There's been the working group and the work we've done around this has been a catalyst for our CEDAS partnership agreements with Rangatani o Manawatu to be formalised, and also work on Te Apiti tourism potential and the regional identity. And through our partnership with Tourism New Zealand, we've been able to bring the General Manager of Domestic Marketing into the region, introducing him to Chris to discuss developments and plans underway and provide feedback and insights on domestic market.
So where to from here? Key to it, as I mentioned earlier, is about Wanaunatanga, and the working group is the voice of business owners, venture operators, whānau, hapu and iwi. And it's relating to some of the impacts within inside of the tourism ventures in Palmerston North City and also the region in general. The key role of the working group is to consider issues, event and planning in terms of their impact on the health and sustainability of whānau employment, Māori business ventures, marketing relationships and the environment. The fundamental difference between the Māori and Indigenous businesses is self-determination, doing it in their own way and own terms, and when tourism meets and upholds the expectations and aspirations of whānau.
So CEDA's role in this is through the facilitation and support of the Rangatani o Manawatu Māori Tourism Working Group to develop a 3-year tourism strategy, which will have clear action plans for each year. The strategy and action plans will link directly to the destination management plan and reflect the objectives seen in the diagram that was in the first slide. The strategy, through its visions and goals and related actions, will consider and at times reflect work done through the Manawatu River Framework, including plans for Te Motu o Potoa, Te Pai Tawhiti, the Manawatu Wanganui Māori Economic Development Strategy, and along with the government's 2019 tourism strategy and other research. The purpose of the strategy is to clearly identify the aspirations of the iwi in the tourism space and clear actions for the next 3 years so that we can help them begin the journey towards achieving these aspirations. The working group is currently working on developing its vision and goals, at the same time finalising the PO, or pillars, for the strategy. And we also have a draft Year 1 action plan. We are hoping to have the strategy finished by the end of June so that we can leap into the Year 1 action plan as of 1st of July. And also looking at options as to how CEDA can continue in a supporting role to help implement those action plans. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you very much, Nina and Hayden. That's great. We have got questions, so starting off with Councillor Johnson.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Kia ora, Hayden and Nina. I'm just wondering how the tourism action plans that you're developing, how we're going to get good coordination with some of Council's strategies around, say, the river management plan and around development plans for Te Motu o Potoa, and, you know, how are we going to get those things talking to one another, I suppose?
I think it's important through the working group that they speak together. Fundamentally, Chris and also Norwayne and Lewis are part of Rangitane or Manawatu, of which there is the ability to have a better connection with council in those areas as well. So it's open to the opportunity for that, and it will be good. It's in the spirit of Wanaunatanga. Kia ora.
Okay, so just to follow up if I can, so we don't have a formal process for that, we're just relying on the fact that some of the same people are in...
The formal process is through a memorandum of understanding with Rangitane or Manawatu. That's one part of it, and the other one is the terms of reference of the working group. And also, if it connects well with the destination management plan, then my understanding is that's what's going to be developing our framework to work in that area.
Okay, thank you.
Just a question from me. Have we got Māori business opportunities that are of a tourism nature that are interested in the region that want to go forward with this plan? Have we got any, without letting the chicken out, you know?
Yes, there is. There are a couple that I know of at the moment, and a couple already operating within inside of the city and the region. So yes.
Great. Thank you very much. Thanks for sharing that. There's no further questions, so thanks very much for presenting today.
Ka pai. Tēnā tātou.
Kia ora.
Moved by Councillor Denison, seconded by Councillor Hancock. Right, we'll look to receive that presentation. Is there any comment on that? No, not at this stage, so we will look to vote. Thank you. Thank you, that's passed 100%. Thanks very much. Thank you. Right, moving on to the next item today, which is the minutes. Thank you. Moved by Councillor Deason, seconded by Councillor Hancock. So we'll look to vote on the minutes. Thank you. It's passed with 13 for and 3 abstentions. Right, moving on to the next item, which is item number 9, and we've got Tony. So Tony, same as normal, we'll take your item as read. Just bring up any items of interest that you'd like to bring forward to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Tēnā koutou katoa, Morena. Like the past year and a half, the last 6 months has been an interesting environment for international relations given the global border restrictions that we have. Though while some of our approach and tactics have had to be refocused like before, our overall objectives remain the same and we have been working towards those. So the first section of the report highlights what we've been doing around our global city partnerships, which by and large has been looking at opportunities to take advantage of digital means of connecting and creating value. Just to add to the Missoula, Montana one, some of the recent online engagement, there is the planning teams of the 2 city councils organising a Zoom to discuss city growth strategies together. And we're also looking to discuss with Missoula some ideas for how to celebrate the 40th anniversary of our sister city relationship next year. So that is of interest. Likewise, for Kunshan, there is a online mayoral and city video conference being planned for April around education, cooperation and environmental management. And so this is ways that we can learn from each other as cities. Likewise, one of the main things of interest in the report, and I guess different from last reports, has been the Ho Chi Minh City Education Agreement, which was signed between our cities in 2014 and has recently been updated and upgraded, in line with the fact that New Zealand has upgraded its strategic partnership with Vietnam in 2020, and that is very much with a focus of the value that our education providers here in the city are placing on that relationship with Vietnam, in particular the opportunity, once borders reopen, to be able to take advantage of those new, stronger partnerships to encourage international education. Additionally, just to update, there are some recent activities highlighted, and many of you were involved in the welcome for many of our diplomatic corps colleagues who came out and enjoyed our Festival of Cultures. So thank you again for helping with that welcome and hospitality. Just to update from the report, because this was submitted a good month ahead of the event, we ended up having the biggest turnout we've ever had, both to the Festival of Cultures, but also in recent years, you'll recall that we have been encouraging our colleagues and friends in the Diplomatic Corps to come up to Palmerston North a day early in order to highlight some of the kind of economic, science and research strengths of our region. And that has again gained popularity year on year. We ended up having over 20 diplomatic representatives come out on the Friday for a Agri-Food Centre of Excellence visit, which included visits to the factory, Sprout, Te Ohuranga Hokai and the food pilot plant. And that was very much appreciated, and this is part of our effort to ensure that while we have a lot of diplomats coming out to celebrate the cultural diversity of our city, and I'll note, I understand the Mayor forwarded a letter of praise from the Dean of the Diplomatic Corps, who I was quite pleased to see said that our Festival of Cultures is second only in popularity and reputation among the Diplomatic Corps to the Waitangi Day events. So that is something certainly to be proud of. But also appreciate the opportunity to be able to learn more about what Palmerston North has to offer the rest of the world. And we are already seeing a good response of interest from members of the Diplomatic Corps who came in the Agri-Food Week events coming up in May. So that is very positive. And I also want to give a shout out to my new International Relations intern, Ella, who is here, who is leading out a piece of work to see what else we can do as a city to add value in the agri-food space, particularly in collecting information and mapping out just the breadth and depth of our region's agri-food partnerships around the world, and how we can really help to support that collaboration. So that is all, but I welcome any questions.
Thank you, Tony. We have a question from Councillor Bowen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Tony. I popped into the queue early because my question is about that work with the Diplomatic Corps, and you went on to talk about it. But I just noticed, in your report, you talk, as we often do, about our International Relations Office, which is you, and a bit of Ella now. So I just wondered what that change in focus may be with the borders being closed to working with our Diplomatic Corps and that relationship building phase. Is that something that we're able to manage within existing resource?
Yes, and you respond as you can within the existing resource and get creative with things like the Palmy Global Ambassador Program, which has been very helpful in tapping into some of the youth leadership and enthusiasm that we have in our city to be able to support some of these hosting capabilities, which particularly on the day when you have 20 or 30 diplomats, that's a lot of work. But, we are doing well, and of course there is a very active role as city councillors that you will play too in representing and helping with our city. So we are always welcome to hear of ways that we can help work together more collaboratively to support and maximise the outcomes we can get from these relationships.
Thank you.
Councillor Butt.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Tony, for your work and keeping us connected with this international community. I have 3 questions, if you allow me. The first question is about the 40th anniversary with the sister cities. What kind of activities we do or we are planning to do?
It's a very good question, but the discussions have yet to happen about that. But of course, given the global situation we're in, it's probably unlikely we're going to be in a stage where we're likely to have any visitors or delegations coming to our city for it. So we're going to look for creative ways that we could perhaps mark the significance of this. We have the 40th anniversary of the Missoula relationship next year, and also 30th anniversary of our relationship with Guiyang in China. So that could be exploring ways that we could, whether it's some kind of memorial or something in one of our parks. For example, we have Missoula Reserve here in Palmerston North, so it could be that we add some kind of feature to that, or potentially the opportunity to host some kind of simultaneous public festival or event for people to be able to participate in those celebrations. But they're still to be explored, but if anybody has any ideas, I do welcome them.
Thank you. The second question, I understand, or I saw a number of diplomats attending our Festival of Cultures, and I guess it's a two-way relationship. In what percentage you think we entertain the invitation by these diplomats and attend their ceremonies or functions?
Yes, so in terms of the International Relations Office engagement, we do tend to focus on that reverse engagement very much more with embassies where we have global city partnerships. As Councillor Bowen mentioned, as a one-person international office, you can only be in so many places at once. However, in saying that, I do know that our Mayor and Deputy Mayor are very active in attending a lot of the National Day events, and we are regularly invited by members of the Diplomatic Corps to come down and celebrate with them. We also are also very warmly welcomed by members of the Diplomatic Corps to pay visits to their embassies down in Wellington, and we get regular invitations to do so. So again, if anybody has a particular interest in an embassy or a topic and would like to explore the opportunity to connect, we're more than happy to help do that.
Thank you. And I guess I know the answer of the third question, but I still ask. The memorandum of agreement, you are going to sign it. I guess it will be signed online, or somebody is going over there?
It will be virtual. It will be wonderful to be able to do it in person, but of course the global circumstances mean that we have to adapt. Yes, the idea is to have it just signed remotely. It is currently going through the Foreign Affairs Department and the Department of Education Training in Ho Chi Minh City to get final approval, and once that is done, we'll be able to arrange a signing and perhaps some opportunity for whether it's a morning tea celebration to mark the significance of the occasion.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Councillor Dennison.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just wanted to inquire around the tertiary study opportunities with the COVID limiting international students coming in. Has there been expansion of the extramural opportunity for international students still to enrol in world-class qualifications here at our institutes?
Yes.
Has that been developed, and what's the state of play with tapping into that opportunity?
The education providers themselves will probably have a lot more detail than I'm able to provide, but I do know that the providers in our region have been responding quite well in terms of the international online offering for students. Massey University, for example, I know has been one of the leading tertiary providers in providing online degrees in education overseas through their global office. And so they have been, and this was pre-COVID as well, so they have been very well placed to adapt to that and continue offering those, and people have been able to continue their degrees online. I believe IPU and UCOL have been adapting similarly to allow people to continue their degrees. Of course, from our point of view, it is ideal that they be able to come here and study, because then, of course, we get the benefit not only of their taking part in study through our providers, but actually being able to be part of our community and live here as a Hamiltonian. So I do know many of the providers are looking to their opportunity as soon as the borders are open again to be able to welcome those students back. But in the meantime, there is an international education strategy that's been refreshed through the International Education Leadership Group that is currently getting final comments and approval from the providers themselves, after which time it will be made available. But CEDA is leading out that piece of work, so I'll kind of allow them to take the lead on that one. But yes, certainly they have been responding very well, but the ideal opportunity everyone is waiting for is for those borders to open so we can welcome them back here into our community.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Tony. That's all the questions.
Thank you.
I look to move the recommendation, seconded by Councillor Johnson. Look for any comment. The Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think, thanks, Tony, and just appreciate the work that you're doing in quite a challenging environment. But I think it really, internationalism underpins, or helps certainly underpin, some of our key areas of our economy. And I think with the borders closed, the work that's being done online, the enhancing of those relationships and using the diplomatic corps and commercial companies and entities with international links and is really good work. So thank you. I think we're playing to our strengths really well with the agri-food and the technology side. I was really impressed with Massey when we took around 20 High Commissioners and consulate people through. Massey had each country's, I suppose, the amount of students they had going through, researchers, PhD, even the amount of people that resonated with that particular country, being perhaps a staff member from that country. It was extremely good research and intel for those various diplomatic corps, High Commissioners, ambassadors, and they really loved it. Also to the other partners, Ag Research, the factory Sprout, it was fantastic work. I think it's, speaking of international days, of course, it's St. Patrick's Day today, so the Irish eyes will be smiling if they aren't already. But thank you, Tony, for all the work you're doing. It's and that at Ho Chi Minh City is another one that's just been blossoming in the background. And for those councillors that were here when we had all the students here, and Ho Chi Minh City online, you could just sense that there's a willingness to do, I call it relationships and certainly business with the city, and I think it's very good stuff. So thank you again, Tony, and the others that help you.
Councillor Dennison.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I continue to be quite impressed with how we've continued to strengthen our relationships in this virtual COVID world with our sister cities, and the outline there with each one it gives detail to just the efforts we make. And that local connection with our ambassadors and high commissioners, like the Mayor outlined, again, it's witnessed each year at the Festival of Cultures, but I know there's a very active office with visits to come through and visits to the likes of our tertiary institutes and businesses in the city. So it's worth celebrating and making note of. Thank you.
With that, we'll look to vote. He's not there. That's passed 15 votes through. So we'll look to the next item, which is Peter Crawford on the quarterly economic monitor. Thank you, Peter. Racing through this agenda, item number 10. Thank you.
Kia ora, Koutere, Mayor and Councillors. Just waiting for the presentation to come up. Start with the latest quarterly estimates, GDP growth estimates from Infometrics. You may remember last quarter they had projected that our growth was down on September the year before, but Statistics New Zealand came out 3 weeks later with their GDP estimates, which showed that New Zealand had grown in the September quarter. They seem to have been quite conservative with the December quarter, showing quite weak growth, and I believe it should have been much stronger than that, because the September quarter was actually hit by that quite long Auckland lockdown. We had some quite significant events that were cancelled in that quarter, and so some very strong retail growth and events activity in that December quarter. So we'll have to wait to see if they're revised. COVID's brought some benefits in terms of much faster data. We used to have to wait 14 months to get employment data. Now we're getting it within 8 weeks at the end of the quarter. Now Statistics New Zealand's publishing 2 sets of employment data, one by where people work and the other one by where people work. Unfortunately, the salary and wage data, they're only publishing by where people live and not where they work. Now, because of some work that we've been doing on the defence profile, it became clear that Statistics New Zealand had overstated Linton's workforce and understated Ōhākea's Air Force. So in the last quarter, there's been a big increase in Manawatu district employment and a small fall in our employment. But it's just a one-off adjustment to the data, and we'll return to normal. But if you look at the annual income growth, 4.1% in the year to December, but this is just for residents in Palmerston or Whurun work, not for our total workforce. If you look at the quarterly change in jobs, since 2018, the Palmerston North data has become quite volatile, and that's really the impact of the major construction projects getting underway, and then sort of over time, those people moving out of those jobs into others. And so I think we'll see that sort of quarterly volatility over the next 10 to 15 years as projects come and go. COVID income relief payments and job seeker numbers. There's at the end of February, there were 808 people, additional people on a job seeker benefit compared with a year ago. But since December, so just over January, February, we've seen 187 net drop in benefit numbers. And the numbers for the city are consistent with the region, where we've really only had half the growth in unemployment compared with the national trend. And comparing data at a regional level, Manawatu-Whanganui region has had the smallest increase in job seeker numbers across all other regions in New Zealand. And I think the prospects are that we're going to see those job seeker numbers continue to trend down quite quickly. One of the real positives for retail spending is the red line. There is the inner CBD, and that's been remarkably stable since we've been getting this data in January 2018, sort of around about 4% growth. Interestingly, the last quarter, up to January, it's actually accelerated, which is the contrast of most CBDs around amongst the major cities that are really struggling. The top green line is the outer CBD, and that's had the strongest growth, just reflecting that new investment that's been coming into the city. You're mostly seeing that down sort of Rangitiki Street and adjacent to that, where there's been quite a lot of new shops built over that time. If you look at where the money's coming from, the top line blue is local spending locally. I've moved from quarterly to annual here, so that averages out that slump we had during the 7-week closure last year. So now over 2% growth in spending by locals at local shops. The red line was our spending outside the region, and that's been in decline for over 2 years now. So well before COVID, locals had reduced their spending, and that was accounting for that very high growth in spending locally. And of course, there's been that decline in visitor spending in the region since April last year. The contrast we're seeing there is the red line is spending from the rest of the Horizons region, and apart from that drop in the April quarter when the shops were closed, that growth rate is pretty strong, and that's a reflection of the growth in population and growth in incomes across the rest of the Horizons region we've really been seeing over the last 10 years. And so that's been really supportive of growth in the city. The rest of New Zealand spending's been in decline for a while, and there'll be the loss of Jetstar will have impacted that. The gorge closure has had an impact on the number of Hawke's Bay people coming in. One of the interesting bits at the start of that trend was we saw quite a upwards blip in spending when the Kapiti Expressway was open, because Wellington is actually quite a significant source of our visitor spending. A fifth of our total, or 20% of our total visitor spending comes from the Wellington region, and a lot of that is for shopping. So it's going to be interesting to see what impact we see in September when Transmission Gully's finally finished, because that has quite an impact on that journey. And then, of course, the Kapiti Express, the Kapiti to North Otaki roads finished in 2022. So that journey to come to shop in Palmerston North is going to shorten quite a bit over the next few years. Housing. When you look back to 10 years ago, we were consenting around about 200 houses a year, and Horowhenua, Manawatu District were actually getting quite close to us in terms of the amount of building activity. So the city's had a long period where it wasn't building enough housing for its workforce growth. But a lot of that reflected the population decline that was occurring in the region over that period. So people were moving out to those small villages and small towns that would have declined further if city workforce hadn't. But now, because all of those parts of the region are growing, suddenly we do have to build more houses, and we have seen that response. There was a pickup in housing development in Horowhenua and Manawatu District, but they've really struggled to maintain that momentum. So for 2 years, those volumes have been dropping off. We will be coming to committee. I'm working on a report with David's team. We have to report by the middle of this year on the latest housing capacity assessment, so that will be coming to Planning and Strategy Committee. I think one of the highlights, which Andy mentioned briefly, was the change to the district plan 4 years ago. Has seen significant growth from intensification within the city, And in 2020, over 60% of our net increase in housing stock came from intensification. We certainly have some challenges with the whole resource management consenting process to get land on the market, and a lot of resource required from the planning team to actually get it through that whole legal process, and it'll be great to see that land coming to market, but Horowhenua, Manawatu district also struggling with the same challenges. And so whether we need 500 houses or 1,000 houses really depends on how we meet that challenge compared with the local authorities around us. The other challenge for the construction sector is the red line is the value of residential building consents. And we were down sort of 2015 around $60 million a year, peaked in June last year at 200 million. But in the last couple of years, we've had these big surges in non-residential commercial construction. So that's really stretching the resources of the construction sector to even keep up with that demand for housing. So it's not just the land supply, but actually, I hear of many builders struggling to get suppliers, just the whole logistics of getting the building materials to site has been a significant challenge. There are two different sets of data for house values. The real estate data is the average value of the houses sold in a particular month, and that's quite volatile depending on whether you've got expensive houses selling one month or cheaper houses. QV publishes an average of the last 3 months and uses the real estate data to try and estimate how that translates into property values across the city. So this is the latest data to February. So the average value, 614,000. I know they're suggesting that the 2021 review is going to show perhaps a 300,000 increase in property values since the last revaluation. And that was a 22.7% increase on a year ago. That's about 115,000 up on a year ago, but even national house prices have increased by about 90,000. So we're becoming a little bit less affordable compared with the average for New Zealand, but the problem is just the amount of money the Reserve Bank has been pushing out into the banks, which has all gone into housing. Their lending to businesses and the agricultural sector has actually been dropping. And so I'm a little bit less concerned about Andy's remarks. If you look at the global financial crisis, the banks don't want mortgagee sales. There were some mortgagee sales during the global financial crisis, and it was mostly investors that had overstretched themselves. And so that was the catalyst for the Reserve Bank bringing in those minimum deposit requirements. So it does give people more leeway. But there could be some mess if the Reserve Bank gets the things wrong in the process of trying to slow the housing market down. I think they're mainly responsible for the growth that we've seen over the last 12 months. Just an update to the major construction projects. That sum at the bottom is only the projects listed in the table. When I first started that list of projects about 5 years ago, we even included some projects under 10 million, but they don't seem that important when you look at sort of $5 to $6 billion worth of work coming up. So there's nothing in there for the Kiwi Rail one. We know that's going ahead, but they're talking about $4 billion of investment that project's going to bring, but over a sort of perhaps 20 to even 25-year time frame, because it takes a long time for logistic companies to get to the point where they can actually shift from one place to another. They've all got leases on their properties, and so that's going to be huge for the city. But there's not included in the table, there's $60 million worth of school investment over the next 10 years, and the race course and a range of other smaller projects. So what's the outlook? housing's got to continue. Last year was quite small in terms of Kāinga Ora. There's certainly a commitment to build. We are starting to get some more consents coming through for that. And still some significant commercial non-residential building projects to come through. And ongoing work happening on the wind farm and of course the new highway getting underway. International spending will continue to decline. It's about 40% down on a year ago, which is interesting, but I think that reflects the fact that our international spending has always had a high visiting family and friends share, and so a lot of those people have stayed. But overall, the outlook looks very positive. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. You happy for questions?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Karatiahana?
Thank you, Atamario Peter. I just wanted to ask some questions. Well, it's really a two-stage question around the electronic card spending and the use of market view. I take it from the way that it's presented when you're reporting by precinct in the city that we're talking about bricks and mortar spending, and yet in the current cycle of reporting from the large retail the large retail companies are mostly reporting a significant increase in online trading versus their bricks and mortar trading. So do we capture that online trading out of Palmerston North at all, or is it something that we don't have access to at the moment?
It was being captured. MarketView, when it was set up, had a relationship with BNZ. Well, in fact, the whole reporting of data was initiated by BNZ because they had very good data on their customers. In November last year, we were advised by MarketView that BNZ had decided to end that relationship. And the piece of data that we've lost is the online spend. The piece that wasn't helpful with the online spend was we didn't know how much of that money spent online actually did come back to a retailer. Like, someone orders their groceries from Countdown, the money's recorded as going out of the city, but someone at the supermarket's being employed to go around the shop, put the package together, and they couldn't trace that money back to Countdown Rangitikei if that was where the customer. So there was always some problems in terms of how we use that, but up until we lost that data, we were seeing in-store, the value of in-store spending still increasing more in dollar terms than the online spend. And I'm not sure anyone knows how to fix because of the way the payment systems work. It's been a long-term problem in the accommodation sector. Someone books their accommodation at the Coachman through bookings.com, and there's no way of actually tracing that money back to the hotel.
Councillor Johnson.
Thank you.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Thanks, Peter. I guess it's more of a general question about the effect of COVID on data and how we allow for that going forward. So a lot of the figures that we look at are comparators year to year. And so, we might say there's been a 5% increase on last year. But now next year, when we come to look at the figures, we're not comparing to a normal year. So no. How are we going to accommodate for that in looking at, how we judge how things are going?
No, the data over next year is going to be a mess. We're going to be reporting really strong growth in spending and GDP. We're really going to have to look at how much we lost a year ago and discount that out of the growth. But it's always going to be approximate in terms of how much is real growth and how much is just a bounce back from the shops being closed for 7 weeks.
So, just to follow up from that, I see traffic flows are down 8%, which, if you didn't look at it too closely, would sound quite good. Oh, good, we're reducing traffic. But presumably that's just a COVID effect, is it?
Mostly. I think people possibly have cut travel back as well. And there was quite a big drop in car registrations. So it'll be interesting to see whether that's just a short-term effect or whether that actually becomes a longer-term change in terms of people looking at other ways of moving.
So the interpretation of a lot of this, we won't be able to do it straight away anyway.
No.
Thank you.
The Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks, Peter, and for those that, thanks for your efforts last night too, because there was a big regional meeting last night where you presented mostly the same stats. Just you talked about the Stats New Zealand changing the New Zealand Defence Force numbers. What have they got for Linton now? Because the reason I say that, I've just gone online and I've got 3 different numbers. I've got 1,600, I've got 2,000, and I've got 2,700. So what are the numbers? What have Stats New Zealand done?
All they've published at this stage is the aggregate numbers. They won't be publishing the February numbers until October. But for the profile we got, the Defence Force gave me the actual civilian and
Permanent service people.
But they didn't give us the numbers for the Lockheed Martins and the others that are also there. And so the total will be bigger than those numbers, but they had definitely understated Ohakia's growth.
Yeah, because as we know, the armed forces people are pretty mobile workforce, and although they might be, I mean, most of them are in Auckland at the moment looking after their MIQ facilities. Yeah. But yeah, it'd be interesting to know what the Boffins in Wellington have done, because there's 3 different numbers, and I mean, it affects our workforce numbers quite a bit. So could you go offline and just do that Madam Chair, if we could get offline, just get those figures, can understand what they are?
I think it'd be around 300 people that would have been, they've placed in London, but realise should have been at Ohakia.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Okay, no further questions. I'll look to move the recommendation, seconded by Councillor Petrinas. Is there any comments to this report? No? Just like to say thank you to Peter for all the effort you've put into the report, and again, I echo the comments from the Mayor for last night. It was very good. Sorry, you want to come into the queue? Okay, thank you very much. Okay, we'll look to vote. That's passed with 14 votes for. We're going to have a 15-minute break. Thanks, everyone.
Julie was waiting.
Okay, shall we start back now? Ain't you lovely? Right, item number 11. So we've got Julie and Peter. Sorry, Peter. So when you're ready.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Kia ora koutou, councillors. We don't have a presentation today. I think we're just here for questions on this profile. Just a reminder that this is the latest in a series of profiles on the priority sectors in the city. These are economic profiles, so they don't have the scope for sort of social and cultural contributions to the city so much. They're primarily economic documents, but we, Peter, is happy to answer questions.
Thank you, that was very brief. I have got questions, so we'll start with the Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I think some of my questions you've probably already seen because I sent them through to the General Manager. So are we going to have, like we've got some advisory groups and some advisory boards, are we going to get, like for instance, Councillor Hancock chairs the Safety Advisory Board, and we would certainly, if we had a safety report, we'd probably get them to run their eye over it. Are we going to do the same for this with our military heritage people?
I can answer that. So, as I said, these are economic profiles. So they're based primarily on Statistics New Zealand data and employment data from the sector itself. So in this case, the Defence Force, the official Defence Force information. So were we to expand the scope of these profiles to include groups like the Military Heritage Group, who I understand an advisory group on specifically heritage issues, that would be an expansion of the scope, and we're not resourced to do that at this present time.
So, Madam Chair, if I could just rephrase the question. So I totally understand that, Julie, but like all sectors, they have terminology. I mean, this sector has a passion for acronyms. We've just got to get those all correct, and some of them aren't correct here. So just...
Yeah, so we're as we've made clear to you, we're very happy to go and check that terminology. I guess, as I said, the primary source of this information is the Defence Force. We need to defer to them in terms of their terminology and the information that they would like to see in this profile. But we're always happy to check details if they come forward as being incorrect, of course.
All right, I'll leave my to comments. Thank you.
Just a comment from me on the when you've got the stats that you're collecting. Are you collecting stats for when the military personnel actually leave the army and go out into the community? So are they still part of whether the army or defence or Ohakia, are they still part of the military personnel? Are they still, and when they're still in the community?
So the base Statistics New Zealand data comes from the employment returns that employers file with IRD. So as soon as someone leaves the Defence Force and moves to another employer, that gets recognised in that employment return, and so they're classified under the sector of their new employer. There are challenges with that because the data's collected from every business, but around 50% of employers are covered on returns that are filed nationally, and then Statistics New Zealand has to apportion that down to a local level, and that's why we get problems from time to time with Linden having too many and Ohaaki or not. The Fonterra research seemed to have disappeared from the city about 12 years ago, and we had to get it back again. So there's those blips from time to time with that administrative data, but we did check it with the Defence Force this time as well.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks, Peter and Julie. Just a question that's probably a bit connected to the question the Mayor has just asked, because I guess in recent years when we've engaged with the defence sector, presentations that they've given us have had a focus particularly around addressing gender gaps within what is a very largely male-dominated workforce at present. And I just noticed on page 70, which is page 14 of the report, still making comments about referring to a total of 1,616 man days instead of work days. And it's just things like language that is really important and does make a difference. And so I wondered what eyes have kind of been over that to pick up on those sorts of things.
I'm mortified that it got past me.
Because otherwise we also need to include a statistic on what days women work. So just something to note.
There's no further questions, so thank you very much. So I'll look to move that, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. Me, and then Alicia. Comment from the Mayor.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair, and I thank the officers, especially you, Peter, for pulling this together. It makes good reading. It shows you that the sector's certainly moved, just like just about all our sectors have in the right direction. But remembering that it'll be ultimately read by the sector and government officials who do use the correct terminology and acronyms, etc. And I put one out there, Hokowhitu is not a base, yet it's been listed as a base. And that's right at the front of the summary. So we can use some of our valuable people here that we have that can look at this. I understand it has been through a very base commander level overview, and of course the base commanders come and go, and of course we've got some new ones at the moment. I think also there's a part here around, it's just not the military, it's actually there's the attracting visitors to the region around the military heritage and the opportunities around that, and of course the city has had quite a big part to play in that, even things like Armistice Day, Anzac Day, some of the events like the tattoo if it ever got off the ground, but also just the lectures and the exhibitions and displays that are held at either the library, Te Manawa, or out at Linton Camp itself. But look, I do also think there's a place too for what ex-military people do for our city. And we have a number of them here on our own staff. And I think that needs to be acknowledged a little bit more than it is. So I don't want to pass or put up another recommendation, Madam Chair, but I would like the GM to have a look at that, and please seriously, if we have a look at that. I don't think as much needs to be done. I think it makes good reading. It just needs a little bit of a tickle up, which is what I've suggested in the last week through my emails to the GM. Thank you.
Okay, there's no further comments. We'll look to vote. That's passed with 15 votes for. Thank you. So we're moving on to the item number 12, which is the Defence Portfolio. So we'll look to, we've got Councillor Bowen here and Councillor Hancock. So we'll first off look to Councillor, I don't know, we'll throw it open to either of you to comment on this.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Elected members are aware of the genesis of this extraordinary portfolio update, which just seeks to give direction to officers in advance of a report that's already on the agenda for arts, culture and heritage in August, which is the annual progress report on the development of a military heritage theme, which we've had on our books since 2019. A little bit of frustration coming from the Defence Heritage community that the Mayor has just mentioned, that they feel that should enable specific storytelling in Cuba Street, but feedback from the officers has been that is potentially outside the scope of what's planned at the moment. So if that's to happen, we feel the clearest way to support and the aspirations of our community and give direction to our officers is by bringing that recommendation through from the defence portfolio. So that is the first recommendation that is in front of us. The second builds on that conversation and reflects a conference the Mayor and I attended in Auckland a few weeks ago, where we received a presentation from Auckland City Council on how they're handling some of their heritage work. And our reflection was that our heritage storytelling has responded, it's been a community-led programme, and we've had strong community leadership in the defence heritage space, but the rest of the community hasn't really stepped up to ask for that same privilege. And so we wanted to look to rebalance that slightly. Heritage Advisory Panel is the way that Auckland has approached that. That might not be the right answer for Palmerston North, but the way we framed up that second recommendation is to ask that the CE reports on the feasibility and process, if we did want to go down that route, to strengthen our approach to heritage management and promote a shared understanding of how our historic heritage be identified, managed, protected, conserved, appreciated and celebrated. So going beyond our current defence heritage focus. And so I'd ask for your support to achieve both of those aims. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Bowen. Councillor Hancock, would you like to speak? And would you like to second the two
Madam Chair,
recommendations?
I'm happy to second that. And I suppose just in terms of comment is that the second recommendation there I feel is just probably more inclusive of all aspects of our heritage, which is very diverse. So happy to support both. Thank you.
So I'd just like to draw your attention to the second recommendation is different to the one that's in the paper. So just so that you all are aware of that. That's all I just wanted to say. It just makes it clearer so that everyone's quite aware of that, Councillor Bowen.
If I could just comment, Madam Chair, to say...
I think you've already commented, Councillor Bowen. I don't
explain
need
the second recommendation?
I don't think you need to comment again, but you can speak as a right of reply. I just got quite a few people in the queue that are wanting to speak, so I'll let them speak first and then you can come back as a right of reply. Right, we've got the Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and look, I thank the two councillors that have put this up. There's been quite a history to this within the recommendations, and we have tried through the officers, and I can recall sitting around this table, I think 4 or 5 years ago, where through the CE, through the GM, or the CE at the time, the GM and officers, that we wanted some sort of recognition of our unique military heritage, but actually it goes further than that. It's around all heritage. And when we went to the New Zealand Heritage Forum, it became really, really clear that we are very underdone in this space. And nobody's to blame, it just hasn't been recognised. So it's about all of heritage, like Councillor Hancock said. Iwi, we're starting to get better at that now, but also our social, our business history, our general community history at what makes up Palmerston North or Te Papiaoia. And we need to give some direction because it clearly is not getting through. It's been ignored in urban design, almost ignored completely. It's been ignored in some placemaking ventures. So I believe we do need to give some stronger direction of where this should go. But actually including number 2 includes everybody. So military's there, but it's just one part of it. Cuba Street's a classic example. If we just ploughed on with what we were going to do with Cuba Street, there'd be no recognition of the huge heritage down that strip. So I hope that this will catch that in time and give the officers some sort of direction on what I hope us as elected members will provide for them. So please, if you could support it, I think this is really a catch-up, to be really honest. Thank you.
Mr. Karai Tianga.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd just be remiss if I didn't note that the change in wording has eliminated the phrase greater prominence to our shared Rangitani and European heritage in this. And it makes me reflect on some of the work we're doing around Te Motuapotua, where we've been talking to the military heritage people about some of the connections with Anzac Park and the Maori Battalion being hosted down in Hokowhitu as well. So I'd quite like to see the reference to our shared heritage, specifically Rangitani and European, be reinstated in the second point. Thank you.
So would you like to put an amendment up? Councillor Naylor would be happy to help you write it.
Well, in that case, the answer is yes.
Councillor Dennison.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In the same line as the Mayor around, I thought we had already had some things in place to have this, telling our stories of the city and the history within our place-making design and infrastructure investment. And it seems that this is missing. This is like a catch-up. And I'm happy to capture it, to advance it. So if there is opportunity to have design elements included in the Cuba Street redevelopment, I'm for it. And I think that's all that this is doing. Plus setting up a bit of a focus to ensure through an advisory panel that future works get that type of input as well. Thank you.
The Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've got 2 questions on the recommendations. Am I able to ask those?
Mm-hmm.
So perhaps I can put them to the mover, and if appropriate, they can be deferred to the General Manager. The first question is just with the specifying Cuba Street redevelopment project, I just want to understand that that's a slightly different direction to what is currently planned for Cuba Street, as the current direction is a bit more broader across the city. So we're now specifying that. That's not included in the current scope of works.
So the scope of work on the Arts, Culture and Heritage agenda is a report on the development of military heritage theme across all council programmes, so intending to include infrastructure programmes within that. The view of some of the community who have been involved in that is that Cuba Street would be the first cab off the rank and an important storytelling opportunity from that military heritage perspective. In terms of the scope of the Cuba Street work, it does include opportunities for storytelling. It just doesn't go as far as doing the storytelling. So the feedback is that it's possible, but there's no direction to do it.
Yes, so I just wanted to ensure my understanding is correct. This is a slightly new direction, or overlay perhaps.
Yes, it's giving direction.
Thank you. Second question is, we currently have the military heritage group, so would that disestablish, obviously the report is asking for looking into this, but is it likely that that group would be disestablished because this would be a broader group that would encompass all aspects of heritage rather than just military heritage, or are we adding another group?
Palmerston North Defence Heritage Advisory Group isn't a committee of council. It has no standing, so we can't tell it to disestablish itself. However, what we're seeking to do is to establish or look at establishing a panel that does sit within council structures. Defence heritage is a really important part of our conversation, as we've heard today with the sector profile, and I wouldn't want to see that taken away, but I do want to see it balanced with other stories that we hold for our community. And I absolutely take the point made by Mr. Karayatiana that Rangatane is primary in that. And it wasn't my intention to remove that intention. Does that answer the question?
So there may be duplication if the Heritage Advisory Panel goes ahead with a broader focus of all heritage.
There wouldn't be duplication in terms of council effort. Council doesn't support the Palmerston North Defence Heritage Advisory Group formally.
But we have seats on it.
I'm appointed to it, that's it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Councillor Johnson.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Through you to the GM, what are the resourcing implications of second recommendation?
We can certainly bring back a report, and that report would include the resourcing implications, and we'd have to investigate those. But certainly, both the first and second recommendation would cover off any budgetary and LTP considerations.
Sorry, could you just...
So for both recommendations 1 and 2, when we were to bring those back, well, obviously the August one is going to be after the LTP is adopted, but then there may need to be some well, I'll deal with the second one first. So recommendation 2, there will be potential budget implications and we'll address those in the report. In terms of item 1, in terms of I guess the ability to include heritage themes within that Cuba Street redevelopment project will depend on the scale and significance of the initiatives that the Heritage Advisory Group would like to be seen included in that project.
Okay, so there are no resourcing requirements to do the report back. That can be done within current resources, can it?
So in terms of recommendation 1, that's already on the work schedule. So we were going to be reporting back on progress on the military heritage theme anyway, so that's a standard report. In terms of item 2, yes, it's another piece of work, but it can be accommodated in terms of completing the report, but in terms of the implementation of what may be in that report, in terms of taking the Heritage Advisory Panel forward, we would detail budget implications.
Thank you.
Finally, Councillor Dingwall.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just had a question with this panel that we're looking at, so I'll direct it to you, I suppose. Would it be worth holding off on 1 until you had the panel to discuss what happens with 1?
I really would not like to see that happen. The Cuba Street infrastructure project is very well advanced, and the infrastructure to tell stories is there. That's simply the pillars that you would put storyboards on at that stage. So number 1 is just talking about how we're going to do that and making sure that the end of that project includes the street presentation, as we did with City East from the plaza to the coffee club. We included our storytelling in that at some level. So it's asking that infrastructure project to actually finish properly with including what that means to our community within it. The second one, I mean, ideally, yes, we'd already have a Heritage Advisory Panel that is broader than our military heritage
I think she
advisory.
just asked about the first one. That was your question, wasn't it, Councillor Dingwall?
No,
Did you get your question answered?
I guess what would be the ramifications if we did hold off on 1 until we had 2 established, so that 2 could decide what would end up being in 1?
The ramifications will be a very angry Defence Heritage body. And I don't see that the defence storytelling in Cuba Street being the only storytelling that we do in that space. So even if we go ahead with some defence stories, which are really significant in Cuba Street, there's still plenty of space for telling other stories, and the Heritage Panel, if we decided to go down that route, could advise on that.
Are you taking comments as well, or just questions? Because it's been a bit...
I thought that we were in comment. No, I think that we've now well over, this was comment.
So can I make a comment?
You can make a comment, and then I'm going to do a right of reply for the mover.
Okay, so I think for me, I wasn't actually here 4 years ago when this all started happening, and I'm aware that there is quite a few members of the community who aren't keen on having the military heritage around them all of the time because it doesn't feel balanced at the moment. There does feel like there is quite a big focus on trying to get military heritage everywhere, and there is a group of people who don't want to see that, who want to see more of a focus on peacekeeping efforts, on the peace side of things, on the rangatane side of things, on the other aspects of our community history. And so for me, I'm not actually going to support 1, but I would support 2, because to me, that feels like a balanced look at things.
Yeah. We can easily take them separately. Okay, right of reply for you, Councillor
Thank you. And thank you all for your help with this. To The reason that the second recommendation is different to the one that's in the report is through conversations with the Mayor and with the GM. What you'll see is we've been more specific about what we're asking for, but we've taken the time frame out of that to try and accommodate or allow officers to accommodate their own workflow and do it within, find the resource that would be necessary. So that's just to explain that. I don't disagree at all with the points raised by Councillor Dingwall. There are many stories that we hold as a community, and what I'm trying to find a way for us to do is to tell those and find balance in that. But I would note that Defence Heritage is not all warmongering. Defence Heritage does recognise the stories of conscientious objection in Palmerston North, in our significant peacekeeping activities that has led out from this community. So that might give you some confidence that it's not all marching off to war. But people have different views, and I think the Defence Heritage community are conscious, and we've talked about this in terms of our welcoming community's position, that we need to explain sometimes why there are so many armed personnel on the streets of Palmerston North, uniformed personnel on our streets. That's confronting to some of our community. And if we don't explain why that is, if that's invisible, then we're doing our community a disservice. And that's very much part of the defence conversation, Defence Heritage conversation that we're having as well. So, thank you.
Right, so we'll look to vote on number 1 first. That has passed 14 votes for and 1 against. We'll look to put number 2 up. And that has passed with 15 votes. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Bowen and Councillor Hancock. Right, we go to the next housing portfolio update from Councillor Beattie. I'll hand it over to you.
I'll take it as read, Councillor.
Thank you. Okay. Any questions for the councillor? Okay. So we just need a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Any comments on the report? No, we'll move into vote. Oh, sorry. There was a question? A comment? Councillor Denison?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is, just wanted to highlight, and I guess it's part of that presentation around the real estate of home ownership. But in the rental space, you can see just the demand being highlighted with that bottom figure in the graph, lifting over just the course of a year. And so, again, just highlighting the need for housing outcomes in our city. Thank you.
I think it's been highlighted today. Okay, we'll look to vote. Thank you. Right, that's passed with 15 votes for. And the final report is the work schedule. I'll just hand over to the General Manager.
Yeah, I've got no further comment to what's
So has anybody got anything they want to comment on in the work schedule? No? So we'll look to move the work schedule. Moved by Councillor Hancock and seconded by Councillor Denison. Okay, we'll look to vote. Thank you, everyone. We're all finished for the day. Enjoy your lunch.